Greetings, fellow travelers, vagrants, explorers, wildlanders, and welcome to the Retro Wildlands. My name is Nomad, and this is my gaming podcast where I like to share my thoughts and experiences with a video game that I've discovered or rediscovered while roaming the gaming wildlands. Thank you for joining us around the campfire, my friends. Today we're checking out another entry in our expedition log, and this one is special for me. While I feel like everyone has talked about this particular game to death at this point, I still feel compelled to talk to you all about it from my perspective. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has certainly made the rounds, winning game award after game award in pretty much every category you can think of. And deservedly so, I might add. For me, though, this game was something special, and I figured that out in just the opening hours of the experience. I've been playing games for decades now. I've loved games. I've obsessed over games. I've rolled credits on some games and just simply moved on. This game, though, this one stayed with me. I don't have a lot of gaming clothing I want to call out, but I have worn some shirts and hoodies with Expedition 33's logo on them from time to time, and on occasion I'll wear them out to things like family gatherings. I've had my friends and family look at my apparel and then ask me, "So, what is this game all about?" And every single time I'm asked that question, I've struggled to answer. Because how do I explain something that didn't just entertain me, but moved me? How do I put into words a game that made me laugh out loud one moment and sit quietly still while tears formed in my eyes in another? Well, my friends, it's kind of a tall order for me, but I'm going to try to explain all of that today. Real quick, though, before we get rolling, I do want to say that I've made every effort to avoid major story spoilers, so those of you who haven't played the game before can listen, knowing that nothing big will get ruined for you from a story perspective. I'm going to be sharing some audio clips from the game here and there, and I'll be doing this to hopefully accentuate a point that I've made, or because I thought the moment was particularly memorable. While these scenes were chosen to keep plot revelations to an absolute minimum, they could be considered spoilers for those wanting to experience the game with as little context as possible, so just be mindful of that as we go today. Gaming Wildlands Expedition Entry 4. Game: Clair Obscur Expedition 33. System: PlayStation 5. Originally completed May 31st, 2025. When I first sat down with Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. It was genuinely the first game I ever played thanks to all the hype surrounding it. When this game originally launched, everywhere I looked, people were either talking about this game or showing off clips from the game, and it was all fascinating to me. Eventually, I caved and got my hands on the game and jumped in, really not knowing much about it. Which, now that I think about it, made the opening of the game even more emotionally impactful to me. Still, it's worth setting the table, so allow me to do that. Expedition 33 opens in Lumiere, a sort of beautifully twisted version of Paris, France. Lumiere seems to be the last sanctuary of human life. In the center of the world, clearly visible from Lumiere's shores, stands a tall, black monolith. At the base of the monolith sits a being known as the Paintress. Every year, the Paintress paints a number on the side of the monolith. When that number appears, everyone whose age matches that number dies. Not metaphorically, not eventually, they fade away, gone. Each year, the number counts down by 1, and when the game starts, 34 is painted on the side of the monolith. Every year, the paintress counts down with a new number. It's ritualistic, it's accepted, it's feared, it's normalized. The world has been living under this cycle of death for years. Entire generations erased, one number at a time, in an event known as the gommage. The game does a great job in the opening section explaining all of this without coming right out and telling it to the player. You learn all of this through conversations with people in Lumiere and put it together yourself. It's fantastic writing and really adds a weight to the moment. When you start the game, you play as a man named Gustave. The gommage is happening at some point this day, and Gustave decides he's going to spend the day with Sophie, a longtime friend and former girlfriend. We as players know that Sophie is quote-unquote participating in the gommage, but we really don't understand what that means until it's actually happening. Imagine all of this for a second. Imagine knowing, not guessing, not fearing. Knowing that when that number appears, the number of your age, your time is up. And here's where the story really starts to hurt in a good way. Society hasn't collapsed, it's adapted. There are farewell gatherings, there are celebrations of life before death, there's this bittersweet culture built around inevitability. People fall in love, and that love is different when the clock is very visible. Parents raise children knowing what year their number might come. Friends joke, argue, dream, all with this looming deadline stitched into reality. The citizens of Lumiere don't just accept their fates completely, however. After every gommage, expeditions are formed. These expeditions usually consist of people who have only 1 year left to live, and they're using that final year to try and break the cycle of death by traveling to the monolith so they can defeat the paintress, or, at the very least, pave the way for future expeditions. As the saying goes, for those who come after. No one joins Expedition 33 because they think it'll be easy. They join because doing nothing feels worse. And the game takes its time letting you feel that weight. You see how people process the coming number differently. Some are angry, some are gentle, some are clinging to hope. Some are just exhausted. And you start to realize this isn't just a fantasy premise. More than that, it's an exploration of mortality in a very literal form. We all live with a number coming someday. In Expedition 33, it's just visible, and that visibility changes everything. What does a life mean if it's measured and scheduled? What does love look like under a deadline? What does courage look like when history says that you're gonna fail? That's the emotional engine of this game, and from the very beginning, you feel all of that. While it took me a moment to truly understand what was happening, all of that is what hooked me right out of the gate. Not spectacle, not mechanics, just the sheer weight of everything. The idea that this expedition isn't just trying to defeat something, it's trying to reclaim time. Once all of that really sinks in, that's where the story truly begins.
I'm here.
Expedition 33's presentation isn't just impressive, it's intentional. From the very first environment, you realize this world isn't going for absolute realism. There's soft edges and diffused light, colors that just feel painted onto the screen rather than rendered. It genuinely looks like you're looking at and walking through a painter's canvas. Which, when you think about it, is kind of perfect in a world seemingly ruled by a being called the Paintress. But here's what really stuck for me. This world is beautiful, so much so that I found myself looking off at the distance for long stretches of time. But even though the world looked so beautiful, the world was never really comfortable. As I was traversing through it, I had this feeling in the back of my head. There's always something that feels slightly off. Everything is gorgeous, but also fragile. Like everything you're looking at could fade if the wrong wind blows. There are spaces that feel lived in and have grown quiet. There's open vistas that are absolutely breathtaking, but they're tinged with a sort of melancholy. Complementing the visual presentation, there's the music. Man, this soundtrack. It doesn't try to overwhelm you. It doesn't try to scream, "Hey everybody, pay attention, this is the sad part," or "This is the epic moment you've been waiting for." Instead, the music, even when exciting, but especially when it's not, it lingers. There are piano motifs that feel very intimate. There's orchestral swells that don't explode into triumph. They rise like a longing. You know, longing is a very specific word, but that's the best one that I can think of. The music sounds like it wants something that it might not get. And that fits the story perfectly. A lot of players that I've talked to have talked about how the soundtrack stuck with them long after they've stopped playing, and I completely understand why. There are tracks that I've gone back to just to feel that atmosphere again, and there are times where the music swelled during a character moment and I genuinely felt that in my chest. And then there were times where the score pulled back so much that all you heard was the wind, or footsteps, or just distant ambience, and that emptiness said more than any dialogue ever could.
I know what you're going to say. You want to offer your condolences. You want to say something comforting. But I don't need it. I've had enough condolences. I've lost so many families now. I just need... Can you please go?
The characters in Expedition 33 are one of my favorite things about this game. There isn't a single one I didn't want to learn about or spend more time with. Which is good, obviously, because none of the themes work if the characters don't feel real. None of the mortality, none of the legacy, none of the emotional weight. It's all useless without great, well-written characters. Now, we would be here all day if I focused on all of them, but I did want to spotlight the first three characters that you spend a lot of time with, and they are Gustav, Mael, and Lune. Each one represents a different way of facing the same looming truth. Gustav is resolve in the face of inevitability. Gustav is, in many ways, the emotional anchor early on. He's steady, he's measured, there's a quiet strength to him. But what I love about how the game handles Gustav is that he's not loud about his courage. He's not delivering constant speeches about hope. Hell, there's a point very early on where he nearly lost all of it. Gustav, though, he just he just keeps moving. You can feel that despite everything happening around him, he fully understands the stakes. You can feel the weight of that sitting on his shoulders. But instead of breaking underneath all of that pressure, he channels it into resolve. And that resolve never feels naive. There's something deeply human about that. He's not fearless, he's deliberate, and he's always looking out for Mael. And if all of that together doesn't make him sound like an awesome human being, I will say he has the absolute right attitude about a person's hobbies.
Have you tried throwing with your other arm instead? If you could hit the paintress directly, that would actually be useful.
You know, hobbies don't always have to be useful. I'm enjoying the uselessness of today and readying my usefulness for tomorrow. And soon, I'll get to do a lot more than throw rocks.
That's what all the other expeditions said.
Hey, you know they gave their lives to lay the trail for us, right?
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Yeah.
Speaking of Mael, she brings a completely different energy. Mael is only 16 years old, opting to join Expedition 33 9 years before her own Gommage. She has become disillusioned with her life in Lumiere and wanted a chance to see the world. Where Gustav feels steady, Mael feels immediate. There's a sort of fire in her, emotion close to the surface. And when I think about it, I love that the game doesn't really try to smooth her out. She reacts, she questions, she challenges. She's young in a way that's refreshing and painful at the same time because youth in this world isn't really protected from the cycle of death. There's something especially heartbreaking about seeing someone with so much life and potential navigating a reality that doesn't promise longevity. Mael represents that raw response to mortality. Not quiet acceptance, not calm resolve, but a sort of urgency, maybe even a little frustration. She kind of has this isn't fair energy that most of us would probably feel, and that emotional honesty makes her incredibly relatable. I found it especially enjoyable to watch her grow throughout the journey here. Mael at her core is not polished, she's just very real, and her interactions, especially early on, bring a spark to the expedition. And anytime I got to see that on display, I couldn't help but want to do everything I could to protect her.
I don't understand what's happening, and I feel like I never understood. Like, I'm always missing something that everyone else just gets. In Lumiere, life never made sense, and I never fit, and now out here, when it was just starting to maybe feel good, then this happens, and...
Yeah. I hate it too. Things we don't understand. They just make us feel small and powerless. But it helps, you know, to focus on the things I do understand, on the people I care about and who care about me. And, you know, now I feel a little less lost, because at least we're lost together. What? What? Stop it. Too cheesy? No. Well, if it makes you feel better, I was even more lost when I was 16.
I heard that was because you were only thinking about girls.
Yep, but guess what? The girls weren't thinking about me at all.
I believe that.
Yeah. You can talk to me, you know. We're family.
And then there's Lune. Lune might be the most internally complex of the three, at least early on. She carries herself with thoughtfulness. There's intelligence there, curiosity, but also something heavier underneath the surface. While Mael feels external with her emotions outward, Lune feels very internal. You get the sense that she's constantly processing, always analyzing. trying to understand not just the world, but what it all means. And in a story that wrestles with big ideas like fate, time, inevitability, Lune feels like the character most aware of the philosophical weight. But the game doesn't turn her into a walking thesis statement. She, just like Gustav and Maël, is very much human. She still has moments of vulnerability, moments where the enormity of the situation seeps through. These three characters are not archetypes, they're perspectives. Gustav is resolve. Maël is emotion. Lune is reflection.
Been a long time since I've seen you play.
A gestural village.
Yeah. I still can't believe they exist. I mean, what other fairy tales are real?
This is ultimately a war of information. There's still too much we don't understand. Where the paintress comes from? Why she does what she does? Who is she? 70 years and we still barely know anything.
And the man on the beach. Yeah, too many unknowns. But if we take down the paintress, at least that gives future generations a chance to unravel the mystery.
You seem better than before.
Yeah. Holding it together. Shock's worn off. A bit. We can't bring anyone back. But I thought we can keep their spirit alive by pushing forward. And at least there's 3 of us now. The mission hasn't changed.
Tomorrow comes.
Tomorrow comes.
Now, I've gone on and on about the story, presentation, and characters, but really, what's it like to actually play Expedition 33? Well, what impressed me the most about this game is that the gameplay never feels disconnected from everything else. Really, it's the essential glue that holds it all together. Probably the most noteworthy thing about the overall experience and the overall gameplay loop is the combat. At its core, the combat is turn-based, though it is not a passive experience in the slightest. You're not just selecting commands and watching animations play out. You are involved. There are timed inputs, there are parries, there are dodges, there are moments where your reflexes matter just as much as your strategy or your character build. And that changes everything. Because in a story about time being visible, about every moment counting, the combat truly demands your attention. The best part, though, is you'll give your attention willingly. When you're in the heat of battle, you have to watch enemy animations, you have to anticipate what's coming, and you're going to have to react. And when I say that out loud, in a subtle way, that presence kind of mirrors the narrative. When time is limited, you don't get to disengage. You don't get to zone out. You're right here, right now, in the moment, making decisions that matter. And I love that. Each character you come across doesn't just feel narratively distinct, they feel mechanically distinct too. Their abilities reflect who they are, and their playstyles encourage you to lean into their personalities. And when it comes to building up your party, it isn't always just about the numbers. It's about synergy. It's about understanding how these individuals function together, which again sort of echoes the story itself. Expedition 33 isn't a lone hero's journey, it is absolutely a group effort, and combat reinforces that idea constantly. There were boss fights where I had to rethink my approach completely. Not because the game was unfair or anything, but because I was expected to adapt, I was expected to learn, and I was expected to get better. This is not a universe where brute force fixes everything. It's a universe where understanding, timing, and coordination matters. Which brings me to the game's difficulty. This game is not a brainless experience. You will get hit hard if you're careless, and I actually think that's important. If the combat were trivial, the stakes wouldn't feel real. When you barely survive a fight, when you land a perfectly timed parry, when you clutch out, as the kids say, a victory with one character standing, it feels incredibly earned. In a narrative all about defying inevitability, earned victories truly matter. Some of these battles are so tense and presented so well, there were moments where I leaned forward in my chair. My heart rate was racing and my knuckles were whitening. Not because I wanted more loot or anything or some extra experience points. It was all because I didn't want these characters to fail. I didn't want to fail.
We're already dead. Look around, look.
This is not a foregone conclusion. When one falls, we continue. Get up. We need to find a safer place. There are Nevrons around.
Lucian.
This is not the place. The Lumina converter seems intact. It's about time we test it in real conditions.
Putain.
Outside of combat, exploration has this deliberate sort of pacing to it. You're not sprinting through checklist objectives, you're moving through spaces that invite you to look around, to notice environmental storytelling, to absorb the atmosphere. And because the world is so artistically crafted, exploration becomes reflective in a way. The experience is not just about traversal, it's more so about immersion. You'll sometimes find optional conversations as you go too, and moments of quiet dialogue. You may even find items or treasures to help you on your journey. Most sought after are the Pictos, abilities that you could place on your characters that everyone can use after the character using them masters them through battle. Even with all of this, the game doesn't bombard you. It trusts you to interact with it in a way that's meaningful for you. Now, here's the part that really solidified this game for me. You are not watching this story unfold. You are participating in it, truly, in every sense of that word. When you execute a perfectly timed ability, you feel responsible. When you make a strategic choice, you feel involved. When you win a difficult battle, you feel relief. And that participation makes the emotional beats land harder than they would have in a passive medium. The reason being is you were there. You were present. You pressed the button. You made the call. And that's a large reason why I think this game affected me the way that it did. It wasn't just that the story was sad or hopeful or beautiful. It's that I was actively engaged in carrying these characters forward. Mechanically, emotionally, all of it. It was all intertwined. When I step back and I look at the full gameplay loop, I'm talking exploration, dialogue, combat, progression, it all feeds the same core experience. Be present. Value the moment. Fight with intention. Move forward together. That's a big reason this game didn't just impress me. That's the biggest reason why this game stayed with me. I've been trying this whole episode to explain why this game matters so much to me, and I feel like I've been jumping all over the place with my thoughts. But in all of my jumbled mess here, all of this comes together to hopefully explain why this game means so much to me, and why it climbed into my top 3 favorite games of all time. Why I light up when somebody else talks about this game, or even recognizes the name. And all of that together, if I were to put it into one thought, kind of comes down to this. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 didn't just tell me a story about mortality. It made me sit with it. It made me think about what it means to have a number coming, even if we don't get to see ours painted in the sky. This game made me think about what I would do differently if the clock was visible. Through Gustav, I felt that quiet resolve, that steady, we have to try. Through Mael, I felt that frustration, but also I felt a fire. Through Lune, I felt that reflection, that need to understand something bigger than myself. And even if I don't understand it fully, I'll at least come away with a general idea of how I fit into it all. All of this together wasn't because I was just watching these characters, it was because I was fighting with them, exploring with them, and choosing with them, and it all hit differently because of that. In a way that I really can't describe, because I'll be spoiling the larger narrative if I do, I learned more about how I choose to personally grieve in the face of loss as well. Looking at everything else, Expedition 33's combat made me present. The music made me feel. The world made me pause. And the story made me reflect. There were moments where I laughed out loud. Moments that caught me off guard with genuine warmth. And there were moments that I just sat there quietly, not quite ready to move on. When the credits finally rolled, I didn't feel like I had finished a game. It felt like I had completed something truly meaningful, and it's been a long time since I've had the privilege of saying that. I have played a lot of video games in my life, and I've loved so many of them. But very few have made me feel the way that I do now. Even though I've tried my best to put into words how I truly feel, it'll never be enough. Very few games have made me reflect on my own life in such a quiet, persistent way. And that's why it makes me a little sad that non-gamers may never experience this work of art for what it is. For you, though, listening to me right now, I want you to play this game if you haven't already. Not because it's trendy, not because it reviewed so well, not because I'm trying to convince you it's objectively perfect, but because I want you to feel what it is that I have felt. I want you to sit in that music. I want you to land that perfectly timed parry and feel your heart jump. I want you to wrestle with the game's themes. I want you to agonize over how you choose to grieve. And I want you to smile warmly to yourself when you think about this game, long after it's over. That closes the book on our 4th entry in our Wildlands Expedition Log, mon amis. This has been the Retro Wildlands Expedition Log number 4, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. Before we put out the campfire and head our separate ways, don't forget to give the Retro Wildlands a follow on social media and make sure you subscribe to the show as well. Our website, theretrowildlands.com, is also the place you want to be at for the latest content, as well as our growing catalog of podcast episodes and blog entries. You can sign up for a free account on our website, which will give you the ability to leave comments on pretty much everything, and it's a great way to interact with me, the show, and the community. The Retro Wildlands is also part of the SuperPod Network, home of some other awesome video game podcasts and other gaming content, and you can check all of that out and more by heading over to superpodnetwork.com. Thank you all again very much for hanging out with me today. Be sure to come back in a couple weeks and we'll turn the page in our expedition log and check out another modern game that I've discovered on this epic gaming journey of mine. The next game I'm going to highlight in this audio format is a game that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did, and yet I found myself pleasantly surprised. We are going to be heading into the neon-soaked, crime-ridden streets of old Detroit. Corporate greed is rampant, seemingly turned up to 11, but our Auto 9 is locked and loaded. Yes, that's right. We are going to be diving into RoboCop Rogue City. Does it capture that raw, unapologetic 80s action magic of the movies? Does it respect the legacy of one of the most iconic sci-fi films ever made? Or is it just another cash grab reboot, wandering the wasteland? Well, we're going to find out together in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for more. Before that, however, our next long-form podcast will see me taking on a retro horror game classic, Fatal Frame 2 on the PlayStation 2. This one is long overdue, and I am very excited to finally play this game for the very first time and give you all a fantastic experience while I take you through the horror with me. Until then, my friends, my name is Nomad, and you can find me roaming the Retro Wildlands.